chill with Pastor Corey Nelson of Grace Kids Church. How you doing today, Pastor?
Doing well.
And we want to tell the people a little bit about yourself and about your church.
Sure. I was buried at Theological Seminary. I've been here at South Louisville for a little over 6 years. And we launched the first and only that we know of children's church in the entire world. We can't find anybody else doing anything similar. It's a tough context. A couple blocks from Churchill Downs, a lot of crime, a lot of poverty. We've got over 300 kids on our roster, and they all come to church of their own accord. They find their way here. They get themselves dressed in the morning, get here, and it's really been spectacular. The changes we've seen in the kids and the community.
Most certainly.
The community.
Most certainly. Excuse me. The first thing I noticed was the liquor store that's right across the street too.
Yep.
It's like you can't get away from a liquor store by a church for some reason.
Right.
Well, that's awesome, man. Because I will say that Grace Kids, it definitely caught my attention a couple of years ago as well. So it was like, that's awesome that a church that's mainly just kids. You know what I'm saying? And I think we really get a chance to see God work
Right.
in a situation like this one. That's awesome. Well, part of the main reason we came to talk with you is to know a little bit more about you and who you are as a pastor, as a person. So I want to lead off with the first question of, when did Jesus Christ first become real to you?
I don't really. My mom was really responsible for my early discipleship, and I don't remember a time where Jesus wasn't. When I was thinking about your questions, I was reminded of a Christmas when I was 3 or 4 years old, and I actually made little bracelets for God and Jesus. I guess I wasn't very Trinitarian at that time, but and I put them in an envelope on the tree and just fully expected them to be gone Christmas morning. Now, of course, they were still there Christmas morning, but just that idea of thinking back then and having that relationship, even as a child, with Jesus. So I can't really remember a time when he wasn't there and when he wasn't real.
Right. So there's like no life-altering situation or circumstance or just trouble or anything like that took place for you that just made you like, you know what, I've always believed in you, I've always loved you, but now I know that you are for me.
I think where my faith probably transformed. I was in a bad accident. My goodness, 25 years ago, 26 years ago, after I'd gotten out of the Marines. Now, while I was in high school, I've always felt called to the ministry, and that surprises people that I grew up with, because while I had that relationship with Christ as a child, as I got older and got more interested in sports and girls and those things, kind of started to drift. But I always felt called to the ministry, which scared me. Really didn't want any part of it. And then after I got out of the Marine Corps, and of course in the Marines, I continued to run as far as I could. And my prayer time was, don't let me be in trouble for this, or don't let me.
Right.
But after I got out, I was in a bad accident shortly after I met my wife, and developed a disease called reflex sympathetic dystrophy. Was pretty darn close to being bedridden for 10 years. I was declared permanently totally disabled by the Veterans Administration, Social Security, and Workman's Comp. I was in real bad shape and did a lot of fighting with God through that. But on the other side of it, it's funny. I always talk that during that time I was waging a war of sorts with God. But on the other side of it, looking back, I was kind of like a petulant child screaming at God and kicking while he was holding me. And I think even before I was restored, and that's really the way I look at it, my relationship with God had completely transformed through that. I did not expect to be healthy again, did not certainly expect to end up going to seminary and doing this. But if you want a point in time where I think everything changed and I understood maybe my relationship with God at a deeper, more profound level, it was through that.
Okay. Yeah, that's
through that.
okay. Yeah. That question is kind of leave it out there for you to go in any direction as deep or, as you want to go. I guess you could say even in that moment when you had that accident, is that really kind of the point where the fear of following that call that went away?
Because it manifested itself about 3 years into that journey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that point, I had been put on 240 milligrams a day of OxyContin. It was on all sorts of medications. And always, when I share that, I always tell people I wasn't abusing it. I mean, I was prescribed it, took it like I was supposed to. But it was pretty much in fog all the time. And my wife and I were watching our son swim at my parents' house. And I can still remember turning to look at her. She still remembers it clearly because in that moment there was nothing more absurd that I could have said than what came out of my mouth after that. And I looked at her. Now keep in mind, I'm incredibly sick at this point, and I'm fighting with God. I can't barely take care of myself, much less other people. And I looked at her and I said, I think God wants me in the ministry. I mean, man, my wife handled that well. Yeah. I mean, it would probably been a little less shocking if there'd been a dragon standing behind me and I said it. But no, that sense of that call, even in the midst of that, would still come up. Which is strange.
Yeah, it is. It is a little strange. But isn't that how God works, though?
It is.
I mean, in the midst of anything that may be going on in your life, and probably the most forsaken kind of situations, it feels like God is right there in the midst of that and working His absolute best.
Right.
I guess it does line up with the scripture where it says, "Where you are weak, that's where my strength is perfected." Right.
Well, I think God has a tendency also to leave these little mile markers for us.
Yeah.
To look back at and say, all right, He was there and He was doing this. And I'm thankful for those mile markers.
Yeah, well, certainly. Yeah, and that's how it worked for me too. When I finally gave in and said yes to this calling, that's when God started to remind me, you remember this? Yeah, that was me. Right. You remember this right here? You thought that was me. See, it's pretty awesome. Okay, so let's go in a different direction here a little bit. With this being Grace Kids Church, how do you differentiate between loving someone and extending grace to them?
A question we get a lot, except it's usually framed in other ways. The question we get a lot down here because, again, we're surrounded by deep poverty. And, we've got drug addicts, we've got gangbangers, we've got convicts, and, we consider ourselves friends of all these folks. And the question we get a lot is, how do you protect against being taken advantage of? And to me, that's grace. I think we're pretty good at loving everybody. I've hugged and been tackled by people that most polite society probably wouldn't want to hang out with. Right. And we've walked alongside all manner of people. And so I think in that is the love, but grace is, things that we do not deserve, things that are unwarranted. And so when it comes to that, I mean, it becomes, when we've gotten good at this, we've gotten better at this. I don't think we're really good at it. Of being able to discern, when somebody's working the system. Mm-hmm. But even then, that there has to be grace because somebody that's doing that is broken and in need of Christ. And so my philosophy all along is we've got a food pantry and clothes closet here as well. If I have it and you need it, you tell me you need it, it's yours. Now, if we're getting the same folks over and over and over and over and over, then we're probably going to have a conversation about how we can break that cycle. Mm-hmm. After we find a job, what can we do? But to me, it goes hand in hand. Now, one side of, I think, love and grace that is uncomfortable for us as Christians is sometimes to truly love someone and exercise grace is to say no. And that's hard for us. But for us, but I think some of the most loving things we've done in this place is to say no.
Yeah, that's crazy you say it like that, because it does feel like no is like the enemy or the opposite of I love you.
Right.
It does feel that way. But
well, I mean, we live in a culture that if you don't agree with me 100%, if you don't get in lockstep with my you hate me. I mean, that's the extreme that we've gone to. And when I talk to people about it, I've got a son that's 25 years old. And I remember when he was a kid, all the stuff he would want to do that I knew was going to be harmful. And as a loving father, the answer is no.
Yeah.
And, I could have said yes. Go ahead and go play in traffic. It's fine. Sometimes no is the most loving thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's awesome. I'm glad you said that. Wow. It took me somewhere else for a moment there. I like that. Because we have to remember that, God loves us and he says no to us at times as well about things. We may be thinking going way over here to the right, but no, I really want you to go left. Right. Or I want you to stay right where you are right now before you do anything else. Because I know I've had the experience of, I hear God saying something to me and I didn't hear all of what God said and I took off running. And next thing you know, here I am like, Lord, what went wrong? You didn't wait for the rest of your instruction. Right. So sometimes no just means you have to be patient because something else is on its way as well. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I know you in ministry here at Grace Kids. Your wife is heavily involved with you in everything that you're doing here as well. So it leads me to this question of what's the best marriage advice that you ever gotten?
So I think the advice that I got before I was married and before I came into the ministry, and it came from my high school geometry teacher. And if you wrestle with the math of what I'm about to say for a second, so it's funny, it came from a math teacher. You run into problems, but the overarching message of what she was saying is spot on. And what she said to me was, when you go into a marriage, it takes 100%, a combined 100% effort. And if you commit to giving 60% of that total and only expecting 40% back, you're always going to be happy. And to me, that was profound because marriage is sacrificial.
Yeah, it is.
And if you're always willing to give more than the other person, you're always going to be happy. And I think the other piece of that is the expectation. Now, luckily for me, I married someone that I don't ever feel like I'm giving enough. I mean, and it's not because she's demanding or she's just that fantastic.
Right.
But even when I do marriage counseling now, oddly enough, in a church full of children, we don't marry kids, but I still do weddings. And I talk to them about that. The idea, there's going to be days where you got to pick up the slack for them. And there's going to be days where they're going to pick up the slack for you. But if we're always giving 60% of that total effort that it takes and only expecting 40 back, we're always going to be happy. And so the other piece of advice that I got, and I wish I could remember who told me this, and it was the idea that you got to protect your spouse in ministry. And you've got to set boundaries for them. Because, the cliches are the pastor's wife has to play piano, the pastor's wife has to sing in the choir.
Yeah, got to do everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
And everywhere that I've been, I've kind of laid down the law and come in. I'm the one called to this ministry. And if she feels led to serve in that way, then we'll support her. Now, I can't slow her down in this place. Try as I might. But, it's, as pastors, and I think it goes the same for our female pastors as well. They have to protect their husbands too. We have an obligation to them to make sure the ministry doesn't consume them.
Right. I know my wife. She definitely tries to tell her best to protect me. Right. In ministry, I call her my pit bull.
Yep.
Yeah, I said it. You're my pit bull. But she's just that protective, you know, that person. I never have to worry about her trying to do too much, or not. Actually, I'm not trying to do too much, but not being afraid to say, you know what, see, no, I can't do this.
Right.
Or do you want to think about this for a second? Or are you putting yourself out there too much?
Right.
So I think, yeah, I see that going both ways as well as have the spouse of the pastor also kind of protecting the pastor as well, because you know how we will say yes to everything a lot of times. We want to see love being extended, grace being extended, mercy being extended in all situations, and it just kind of puts us in a situation where sometimes we don't want to say no.
Right.
So yeah, it's pretty cool, man. So how is that working out though? I mean, everything going on here. How's everything going here with Grace Kids?
Things at Grace Kids, as far as the ministry, could not be better. I never intended to be a youth pastor or children's, but I mean, look at me.
Right.
Seriously. Now, with, you know, previously the long flowing hair, and I drive a Mustang, so everybody was like, "Oh, you got to be a youth." I want to be a part of that.
Right.
But you know, God has put us in a place where it takes somebody that's a little crazy to go walk these streets and to walk up to folks that most of us probably wouldn't. One of the greatest things about this place, and I said earlier, we've got over 300 kids on our roster. I don't have to go door to door. I don't have to advertise. We don't have to come up with, you know, these functions to draw people. It's all word of mouth. And I think when you take God into a place, even if they don't recognize or understand that they need Him or that they're hungry for Him, and you put that light out there, and they just come. We found out yesterday that we're losing 5 more kids, and it's very transient here. And so a lot of times, you know, when families move out, we don't know about it. They leave in the middle of the night, dump all their stuff, and they're going, well, at least we got a little warning with these guys. And it hurts, and because, you know, they become like your kids. Right? We're with them 6 days a week. But in that, you know, we've been through this so many times, there'll be more. And there'll be kids that need to be discipled, that need to be loved, that need to be led, that'll step back in. So it's, as far as the ministry, could not be better. Now, when you've got a church that, one, is in a poor community, I hate using that language, and a church that only has children and youth that are coming from families that are struggling, you know, they can't give. And so the struggles in this place are fundraising or keeping the lights on. But it's been that way since day one. You know, we've only been a children's church officially for 2 years, but for the 6 years, we've ministered to this population. I don't even know where our offering plates are anymore, which is amazing. I honestly don't know where they're at.
Yeah, you usually see them on the
Yeah,
members table or podium somewhere.
I have no idea where they're at. But for 6 years, we're still here.
That's awesome, man.
It's
awesome.
rolling.
Yeah, it talks about faith, I mean, in a tremendous way to me. You know, to the faith of, I don't know where the collection plates are at, but the lights are still on. We're still here. We're still ministering. There it is. It's not our church. It's God's church.
That's right.
You know, God will do what He does. He'll do what He does. That's pretty awesome, though, man. It's you know, like I said, the first instance that I heard of Grace Kids, I think I was at a Union College summer before last. I don't know who was talking about it. Pastor Shirley was talking about it. Pastor Shirley.
Okay.
Yeah, Pastor Shirley Burks. I think she said she invited you to come and preach at Coke while she was gone.
Right.
While her and Pastor George were gone, and I got to hearing about the ministry. I was like, man, that is awesome, man. Because I mean, who doesn't love kids? I mean, I got an 8-year-old myself, 22 and 19. So I love kids, and just to hear about a church that's just filled with kids.
Right.
You said you had 300 on your roster. That's pretty awesome, man. And there's no better word of mouth than that of a child.
Right.
You know, if you get the children excited about coming to church, excited about learning about God, and the love they feel, you know, there's nothing better than that. You know, there's nothing better than that. So yeah, It's pretty cool, man. Well, I will say that this has definitely been a pretty awesome time, to sit down and get to know a little bit more about you. Or is there anything you want to tell the people about how they can actually give to the ministry here?
So the best way is to get on our website, which is gracekidschurch.com, and there's a link there to be able to give electronically. Of course, we also accept checks. 900 Denmark Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40215.
Yeah, we gotta make sure we keep these doors open for these kids here, man. Because I mean, I don't know. We don't have to do anything. Let me rewind on that. We want to definitely contribute to it, but we know God is doing all the work in this place. So there's no need in saying anything further than that. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for doing this.
And hopefully you all will get a chance to see even more, and you get a chance to really get a chance to know who Pastor Corey is here at Grace Kids. He gave you the address. He gave you a way to give to this ministry if that's what you feel led to do. And we thank you for this time. And yeah, thank you. We're gonna put out that last thing.